Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. Today, I thought we'd talk a little bit about what I call comparisonitis. And it is the beginning of September, so a lot of the kids are going back to school, so they're going to experience this in the real world. More what I'm talking about is social media comparisonitis because it's a bit of an epidemic in our world where you see something online and everybody assumes that it's real, so they feel bad about themselves because of what they see and they think that they need to change themselves to be more like that person. And I understand social media is a gift and a lot of times it can be really handy, but sometimes it's a devil in disguise where we think it's doing a lot of amazing things and it is raising money for charities and bringing awareness to certain things, but sometimes it can be very dangerous, especially for young people. Um, we have to remember that a lot of the pictures on social media are staged. They're not actually what reality looks like. There's filters on them, and that people don't typically post things that aren't on their highlight reel. So the common day to day things like, I'm really proud of myself today because I cleaned my kitchen. Most people wouldn't post something like that. Most people would be like, I'm having champagne on a boat in Ibiza. So, taking into consideration that your life doesn't have to look like theirs for it to be amazing, because nobody's life looks like that all the time, every day. So, just a little bit of mental health awareness this month because there's a lot going on with all the kids going back to school and kids going off to university. And it's a really big challenge that a lot of kids face because they have so much going on already. And then they're worried about, oh, well, that girl on Instagram has nicer hair than me. So now I need to spend money on making my hair look like that or figure out how to do it. And there are really more important things going on in the world and things you can spend your time on. If that makes you happy, go for it. But just do it for the right reasons. Don't do it for anybody else. The spike in mental health got a lot worse after social media started taking off. I know that when Facebook first started taking off, it wasn't a huge deal, but I feel like Instagram, especially, is very judgy because they actually remove the feature where you can see other people can see how many likes you have on a picture because it makes it easier for other people and is less likely to compare when you're like, oh, that person has 2,500 more likes than me. Morning, Monica. And so I need to do something better with my next one. And if it motivates you to move forward, that's great. But again, if you're doing it because you think that they're better than you, that's not really a good reason to root into and put that energy behind what you're doing. If you want to do it to make yourself better and learn more skills, then great. But if you're doing it to compete with the girl next door, then that's not really a healthy way to look at it. What we need as a society, and I feel like young people especially, we look for our validation externally. Meaning if the cool kid at school says that you're cool, that means that you're great. You're doing amazing things. But if the super fun kid in art class says, hey, I really like what you're doing here, there's most kids put less value in that than they do from the cool kid in school. So I just want you to remember that the only person's opinion of you that matters is yours. If you think you're doing great and you're doing your best every day, that's all that matters. Don't worry about what other people say. Those of you that knew me in high school, I had a bunch of friends in different friend groups, but I had, the science friends that took all my hard classes with me, and I had art friends, and I had friends from fitness class. So I was kind of all over the map. And I was just happy doing my thing. And that really worked for me. Um, Definitely would not go back and do high school again just because it wasn't the best experience for me, but had a lot of good memories from it, and that's all that I'm going to say about that. Um, but learning to validate yourself externally and not be so hard on yourself, because a lot of people, um, again, comparisonitis, you see somebody walking down the street and you're like, oh, I'll never be cool like her because I don't have that handbag. Or, oh, that guy looks so cool in his watch. But those things don't bring any internal value. They're just things that make us synthetically feel good. If you can't feel good by yourself, those things will never make you happy because life is not about things. So it takes a lot of practice. And what I find helps me, and I know this is talked about a lot now as more of a trend than what it's actually for, but having a gratitude practice is really big. Some people do it in the morning and they wake up and they talk about things that they're grateful for. They write it down in a journal. Personally, I try and do before I go to bed. So I talk about my top 3 highlights from the day and what I'm grateful for that day and try and come up with something different. Yes, you could say the air you breathe, the roof you have over your head, if that's something that you've gained recently. But you can be grateful for the roof over your head all day. But if you find yourself repeating the same things, maybe it's time to dig a little deeper and find something else. I used to write Kaya down every day. And I was like, what about her am I grateful for? Instead of just Kaya, I'm grateful for the way she reminds me to take breaks some days when I'm working myself too hard. And the reminders that she gives me to, okay, it's time to go to the forest and practice some grounding activities. Monica says, I struggle with this every day, not in a material way, but just trying not to be so different. Not fitting in is hard. I used to, thank you for your comment. I used to be upset when people called me weird or strange or different. And now I take it as a compliment because I made a lot of choices in my life that other people would not have made, like starting a business in a field that doesn't really exist. And I take pride in that because I didn't go mainstream like everybody told me to. And I'm very happy with my choice. I'm very grateful for the work that I get to do every day in helping the animals. But sometimes I see people in their traditional 9-to-5s and living in the city and they're making a lot of money and they seem to be happy, but on the inside, they hate their job, they hate living in the city, their commute is terrible, and it's what people present externally is not usually how they actually feel internally. Monica says, I agree, but people can be very cruel. Yes, they can. And another thing that I've had to learn over the years is that what people say about you has more to do with how they feel about themselves than anything to do with you. Because I had kids in school that called me names and things like that, even though I don't remember doing anything to them. And I could be wrong, but I never did anything to them and they didn't like me anyway. So they called me names, and if I took them to heart, that would have been very toxic for me. But over the years, I've realized that they were struggling with some body image issues or self-confidence issues. And because I was happy being myself and having fun in art class and then going and studying really hard in science class and then go running around in gym class, I kind of got along with all the groups. So they weren't comfortable in their own skin, and so they projected that onto me. And sometimes it's really hard to see it that way when you're in the moment, but oftentimes I reflect back on it and kind of do the Ho'oponopono prayer. Have you heard of that, Monica? It's, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. So you can say it to the experience, you can say it to the person that triggered you, you can say it to the memory, if it happened a long time ago, and kind of let the toxicity from that experience go. You can keep the lessons that you learned, but just let that part go so that you're not holding on to that. They say that a grudge is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's not really helping anyone, and the only person that's hurting is you. So ultimately, you have to learn to let that go, and your life is better for it. Self-care is another big one because especially with visual comparisons on social media, if you're looking at someone and you're like, oh, well, they're so much healthier than me, but they could be struggling a lot. They could have serious anxiety or depression or be on medication for something serious, and saying something catty or rude on their post could set them off. So just be kind to everybody. I know that's Ellen DeGeneres' line, but just be kind to everybody and don't let, I don't want to be, don't let the negative people kind of change how you are around other people. Because when we're younger, we kind of conform to our friend group. And if they're mean to certain other people, then we tend to kind of go along with that. And if you learn to be nice to everybody, you tend not to have that problem as much. But self-care in terms of having people that you can have authentic conversations with. So if you're struggling with something, you need to have someone you can talk to about it who won't judge you. If you haven't seen Brene Brown's Braving the Wilderness talk, I highly suggest it. It talks about the 7 components of trust: boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, meaning not sharing the secrets, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. And I've had this conversation quite a few times lately because I'm working on building those relationships with the people in my life that are closest to me, and it's really important for me that I can trust them. So for me, that is self-care because I'm strengthening the relationship so I have more of those people to go to. But having people that you can be yourself around authentically and not worry about anything. You can just be yourself and show up and love being around those people. You need people like that in your life because it makes you feel safe and secure and free to show up as you are. The last thing I want to say about this is that we live in the age of instant gratification, and a lot of people struggle when they work really hard on something and they put it out there and it doesn't get received the way that they want it to. And sometimes it takes 15 or 20 of big things that you put out there for anyone to actually grasp on and for it to take off the way you want it to. So don't get discouraged if it's not immediately groundbreaking and it doesn't have, 10,000 likes and all of these things, because you're still showing up. Even if the audience is smaller, you're still showing up. So I know we're used to getting everything immediately. Things like you can now get Amazon to ship directly to your house. You can have food delivered, and, pretty much you don't have to leave your house to do anything. So if you have to work a little harder and stick with it a little longer, try not to get discouraged, because the reward doesn't always show up immediately. And I believe the analogy is something like there was a man digging for gold, and he dug for a year, and he was about this far from breaking through to the room that had the gold, and he turned around and gave up. And then somebody else just kept going slower, but kept going, and he got there. So sometimes it's just about sticking with it, trying different things to see what works, but don't give up, because you will find what works for you. You will find the people that you're meant to be with, your soul family. And that's all I wanted to say about comparisonitis. I hope you have a wonderful first week of September. If you're going back to school, have a fabulous first week. I hope you love your classes, and I will see you next week. You're welcome, Monica. Have a great day.